So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world. We'll take a look at a few clips from the news and have a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And of course, if you would like to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That is at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can also find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. And you can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Being joined today by Monkey sitting on the desk. You just saw him there. Some of you saw him. And of course, I do try to read through as many of the comments as is reasonable. So I'll go ahead and say hello to some of the people that have decided to chime in. Tuck is here, as well as Brian, Helter, Dragon, Legends, and Raccoon joining us. Chose to say hello so far. Again, I've got Monkey sitting on the desk, keeping me company. I guess he's got nothing better to do, and that's okay. I never mind having our feline friends hanging about. Still working with 18 of them. Still working with 18. I don't think I'm going to be getting rid of any anytime soon since they clipped everyone's ear. And Cyberjack Sr. has joined us as we get ready to dive into the realm of the ridiculous and see what is going on in the world today. What is going on in the world today? Too much of one thing and not enough of the other. JJ has joined us. Glad you could make it. Always happy to have as many people as possible join us for the live portion. We're going to jump into a Reuters article here in a moment. Reuters article. Big surprise, everyone, or maybe not. Maybe this isn't a surprise to anyone at all as everybody tries to walk back the last 4 years. Judge tosses out Trump's 2020 election case after the prosecutors request it. Oh, wow. Is that so? Is that so? A U.S. judge on Monday dismissed the federal criminal case accusing Donald Trump of attempting to overturn the 2020 election defeat after prosecutors moved to drop that prosecution and a second case against the president-elect, citing the Justice Department's policy against prosecuting a sitting president. It's not that they can't if they had a case, but there's a policy that it's not good protocol, and they're using this as the excuse to let a couple of these BS cases go. And Monkey has joined us. It says the order from U.S. District Judge Tanya Shutkin, if I pronounce that correctly, puts an end to the federal effort to hold Trump criminally responsible for his attempts to hold on to power after losing the 2020 election, culminating in the January 6th, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by a mob of his supporters. It wasn't an attack. At least they're not calling it an insurrection anymore, but they dropped that ever since Tucker Carlson got the video. This is nuts. It says the move came after special counsel Jack Smith, the lead prosecutor overseeing both cases, moved to dismiss the election case and end his attempts to revive a separate case accusing Trump of illegally retaining classified documents when he left his office in 2021 after his first term as president. So the insurrection case and the documents at Mar-a-Lago case are now history. They've been tossed out by request, and the judge let it go when the prosecutor asked onto it. And that's ridiculous anyway. He did not criminally attempt to hold on to power. That didn't happen. And I see that Kimberly has joined us from Las Vegas, Sin City. How does it smell? You been on the Strip? Does it smell pretty bad on the Strip? I have not been to Las Vegas, but my wife has, and she said it was pretty funky. All People says, do you suppose Jack Smith and Tanya Chutkin are shaking in their boots? How about Alvin Bragg, Latita James, or Fonnie Willis? They probably are. They probably are. This doesn't surprise me at all. This is the same reason why the judge that's overseeing Bragg's case has indefinitely postponed um, following up on the prosecution. I mean, they technically found him guilty, but it doesn't count until they pass sentencing, which has not happened, and it doesn't look like it's going to. But these people, they were put in place. I mean, Bragg ran on the ticket that he would focus on Trump, and that's all he did. That's how he got the job. Highest paid DA in the country. Highest paid DA in the country. They were weaponized. And that's got to weigh for something. I don't expect that they're going to have much in the way of careers after this is all over. And Kimberly's, oh, what am I? Where am I here? I lost a couple of places. New York Patriot has joined us. Brian says Trump's not guilty of anything. Liberal pieces of garbage looking for anything they can to get him. It's ridiculous. Kimberly says they don't walk the strip, but I do have a good sniffer anyway, so I don't have a good sniffer anyway. I couldn't tell. I see. Fluke Man's joined us. Says finally they dropped the charges against Trump, but why now? Isn't it funny they made the decision after the election too little too late to get on Trump's Christmas list? No kidding. And Patriot says the judge in the New York case has opened an avenue to throw the case out. I guess Trump wasn't as bad as they said. And yeah, that's really the thing. You see, now if he had passed his sentencing, that allows for them to conduct an appeal. And when it went to a higher court, it would have been thrown out because Bragg overstepped his authority with the case in the first place. It never should have been a trial. There's nothing illegal about having somebody sign a non-disclosure agreement. Hell, if I remember correctly, Bill Clinton had 3 or 4 women sign one and paid them less than Trump. Oh, no, wait a minute. He paid more, didn't he? He paid more to the females that he tried to shut up than Trump. It's not illegal. I mean, hell, when I worked at Frito-Lay, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that I wouldn't explain details about any of the, mechanical or programming details about any of the manufacturing process. People sign that crap all the time. It doesn't mean anything. Where am I here? All People says, do you suppose Fonnie Willis, boy toy Nathan Wade, will turn state's evidence against her to save his own butt? He's already kind of been doing that, though. We read where he resurfaced a few weeks ago because he was called before congressional hearings, and he was already trying to throw her under the bus then. But so, yeah, he'll cover his ass, especially if he's going to try to keep any of that money that he didn't earn. And Puck has joined us. He says, Kat, where did he go? Monkey, you still in here? Monkey was in here. He wandered off. Oh, well. No kitties. No kitties. But this doesn't surprise me at all. This does not surprise me at all. It says it represents a big legal victory for the Republican president-elect who won the November 5th election and is set to return to office. The Justice Department's policy that prosecutors cited dates back to the 70s. It holds that a criminal prosecution of a sitting president would violate U.S. Constitution by undermining the ability of the country's chief executive to function. Courts will still have to approve both requests from prosecutors. They've already basically done it. So that's 2 more cases out the window. That's 2 more cases out the window. It says this outcome is not based on the merits of strength of the case against the defendant, prosecutors wrote in the filing. That's just saving face. They really didn't have a leg to stand on. They really didn't. And Brian says he hates signing things. You should sign as little as possible. New York Patriot said a friend of mine won a case against Bank of America, had to sign an NDA. He took the winnings and moved to Texas. Yeah, and they do that all the time. I know about criminal activity at your bank or something that happened at the bank that shouldn't have. Oh, we'll give you a settlement and sign this to keep your mouth shut. Is that fair or ethical? Not really, but it's done all the time. Puck says these people behind the lawfare should be prosecuted. Also hearing that Michael Bloomberg was behind Alex Jones lawsuits and bogus bids on InfoWars. Absolutely. And Flukeman said, hadn't heard anything about Trump mentioning those who were imprisoned for January 6th. I haven't really heard much either, but that might be something he's sitting on, because he's not trying to press his luck too much before January 20th. But I'm sure it'll come up. I'm sure it'll come up. All people said personally, I've had a hard time believing that a germaphobe like Trump would ever spend 5 seconds in the same room with someone like Stormy Daniels or any of her ilk. Who knows? I mean, yeah, I know. That's a good point. That is a good point. And who knows? I mean, it could be that she just made accusations and she sounded plausible, and so she got paid off. And we'll never really know the truth. The only two that really know the truth are him and Stormy. Stormy Daniels. Yes, I'm not imagining that that is her real name. And this, one more here from Brian before we move on to the next article, which will be from The Hill. Brian says people don't even know what they're really signing a lot of the time, such as user agreements where they just scroll through and then click OK to sign it. Correct. That happens all the time. That's why your phone's able to spy on you. Not that there's anything you could do about it. My favorite was always UPS, what they wanting you to sign for errors. You put a package in the wrong truck, and they give you a demerit for it, and they want you to sign the demerit sheet. And I always refused to do it. And then they would tell me, well, you have to write refuse to sign. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that either. And the trick with that, and I did a video on it a long time ago, even if you sign something else on there, you're acknowledging the document. So I could put an X on there. I could write refuse to sign. Whatever I write on there, it's acknowledging the document, even if I didn't officially sign it. So yeah, don't do that. Don't sign anything if you can help it, folks. We sign our lives away all the time anyway, because we don't have much of a choice otherwise. Article from The Hill we're going to jump to, because someone asked about this the other day. Do you think we'll be seeing Kamala Harris again? Not according to the PACs. It says mega donor, Democrat overspending disqualifies Harris forever. She was so irresponsible with the donations. They're putting her on their blacklist. They're putting her on the blacklist. Jericho says, I took the advice from you years ago. I worked at UPS, so I know. Monkey says, even if you spit on it. Yes, absolutely. So here we go. Vice President Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz are set to address the Democratic National Committee finance directors amid reports the campaign is $20 million in debt after lavish spending sprees. Political mega donor John Morgan has told News Nation, on Monday that those who poured money into the Harris-Walz campaign were trying to defeat Trump, but not elect Harris. And her campaign spending is cause for serious concerns. So that's an interesting admission. We don't care who it was. We weren't really worried about electing Harris. It could have been anyone. We just wanted to beat Trump, and they didn't. But Harris's campaign was so irresponsible with the money. It's all gone, and they're in debt and didn't pay their workers. And he was like, no, we're not going to give money to her like that ever again. Forget it. It says, all of a sudden, everybody's got the keys to the candy store. This is a quote from Morgan. And he's the guy that's in charge of this. All of a sudden, everybody's got the keys to the candy store. Ad buyers, talent consultants. There's 100 days to do it, and the money starts pouring in. Ego and a crazy desire to obtain commissions on placed ads drove much of the spending, including, for example, $15 million for event production, $4 million in private jets, $1 million to Oprah. There it is again, among other pricey purchases. When asked if Morgan believes someone possibly stole money, he said maybe legally. The donor added the reported 1.5, it's not a billion anymore, get this, $1.5 billion that Harris spent in 4 months is proof Harris should not run again. I think this disqualifies her forever. If you can't run a campaign, you can't run America. The same thing is going to follow Harris for the rest of her career. She cannot be trusted with money, and the donors are going to be like, where is this money? 1.5 billion now. More has been revealed. JJ says he liked the scene out of the Major League where the coach pissed on the contract when it was waved in his face. I don't suppose that counts. I don't know. Puck says, hilarious. No way in hell Harris can make it through a primary anyway. Cyberjack says the only thing about Kamala is the list she's on. Patriot says, well, that's what happens when you pay for celebrities to campaign for you. Flukeman says Harris doesn't have any money for partial payment. Yeah, well, they're still in the hole. 1.5. It's not a billion anymore. It's $1.5 billion in 4 months on advertising and celebrities and experts. Nothing to show for it, and people didn't get paid. Employees did not get paid. And Preparedness HQ has joined us, as well as Rodney. Rodney says, can you say embezzlement? I'm sure some money got shifted around somewhere. I'm sure. And Patriot says Harris is done. She should just sail off into the sunset and stay out of the way. But there it is. I mean, if people were wondering, this is the guy who's in charge of the mega donors that dumped all this money in there, who in this dialogue to News Nation admitted they didn't give a shit about Harris. They just wanted to beat Trump. They didn't care who it was. It could have been anyone. You could have ran a chimp and they would have donated the money just to thwart Donald Trump. And B, the reckless overspending on her campaign indicates that she will never be eligible for this again. They don't want to see her again. Chris said she spent all the money and more. Sounds like Biden. No kidding, because he's tearing through money. No president has spent more than President Biden. And he is really cranking it up right now. Flukeman said, thought she only needed to pay back $20 million. There's an additional 20 that's owed, but it's somehow or other in this whole $1.5 billion spending spree over the last 4 months, which is insane. That is insane. Oh my God, that's a lot of money. What do you even say to that? That's like $375 million a month, right? I'll take it. Oh no, that's just unacceptable. I'm sorry. But somewhere in all of that, the people working on her campaign didn't get their checks. You think that would be a priority. You would think. And John is here. He says he's here for the cats. There's no cats in the room. There's no cats in the room right now. Monkey was in here, but he sauntered off. Puck wants to know if anyone saw the news about Texas issuing a gold silver-backed currency. Several states have already declared gold and silver as legal tender. I have not seen that. All People says Harris already looked old and is now aged a billionfold in the last 4 years, and especially in the last 6 months. And Flukeman says 20 million or 1.5 billion, whatever amount. Imagine how much cat food you could have gotten for that. I know. I know. I wouldn't need to. I would never need to worry about taking care of my feline neighbors again. I'm sure. This is embarrassing. $1.5 billion. I think that's the most that's ever been spent on a campaign ever. And notice the earrings. There they are again. Because you can't think on your own. Can't think on your own. Sven says the important people were paid. Yeah, like Oprah. And Al Sharpton. JJ says, I'm sure she squirreled some of that away for herself, not unlike what Bernie did with campaign funds. Yeah, and Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams. I can't stand her. And speaking of which, here's where some of that money went. This has just been revealed, and we're going to actually jump to a Fox News article talking about MSNBC. MSNBC apparently was unaware that the Harris campaign gave $500,000 to Al Sharpton's group ahead of their very friendly interview. MSNBC admitted it was unaware Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign paid $500,000 to Reverend, and I say that tongue in cheek, Reverend Al Sharpton, his National Action Network nonprofit. Oh, so he doesn't have to pay taxes on it. That's great. Ahead of a friendly interview with the Democratic nominee ahead of Election Day. Harris sat down for a friendly, they keep emphasizing that, because it was not an interview. It's not an interview because it was staged. Sat down for a friendly interview on October 20th with MSNBC's Sharpton, an open supporter of Harris and the Democratic Party. Following Harris's loss to President-elect Donald Trump, FEC filings have revealed the Harris campaign gave $250,000 donations to Sharpton's nonprofit organization in September and October, but that MSNBC's host did not inform the viewers of the contributions or the conflict of interest before or after the interview. Yeah. MSNBC, quote, was unaware of the donations made by the National Action Network, or to the National Action Network, according to spokespersons from MSNBC. The Free Beacon added that Sharpton did not inform network brass that his nonprofit received money from the Harris campaign. MSNBC declined to say if Sharpton would face consequences according to the report, because it's illegal for him to take that without disclosing it, is the problem. You don't disclose it after the fact. Now, MSNBC could be in a lot of trouble. Could be in a lot of trouble. Puck says Harris looks old because she's been smoking cigars in Cosmo Kramer's apartment. Has she? Nature Nerd says Elon Musk will shrink the bureaucracy, which will cut government spending and boost the economy a lot. Dragon said Al Sharpton has been race baiting since the Bronze Age. I'd be more surprised to find a national Democratic campaign that he didn't find a way to personally profit from. Indeed. All people said churches and NGOs should pay taxes since they use same roads and fire and police services as us nobodies. Well, if they truly stuck to themselves, I wouldn't worry about it. If you have a community church that actually looks after its community, has a daycare, has a food bank, has a private school for the kids, a clothing bank, you know what I mean, actually takes care of its neighborhood, I would say leave them alone. But most churches don't do all that, do they? Not really. Not really. And especially if they're going to have anything political going on, then I would say they shouldn't have a nonprofit. Helter says this will become an FEC issue, and unfortunately for the Harris campaign, she'll be investigated during the Trump administration. And Country Living has made it. Glad you could join us today. Luke Man says, wonder how Harris let it get out of control like that. Did her parents spoil her rotten to the core? Didn't teach her money management? Well, I mean, the whole narrative the whole narrative of her growing up in a middle-class family is more spin. It's not true at all. Both of her parents are wealthy and affluent. So, I mean, she probably never wanted for anything. All people wants to know if Sharpton has HIV. I have no idea. Semper Fi said, with all the missing money, can I get some? Finally got married this past Friday after 26 years together. Wow. Waiting for the long game, huh? I don't think my wife would have been that patient. as we go on here, speaking of somebody who never actually struggled a day in their life, but wants to waste all of your tax dollars. And this is a cool down article. Cool down. New York Patriot suggests that Harris never had to manage money because she's always had it. Exactly. That doesn't mean you don't learn how to pinch your pennies. Scrooge had a point. Cool down says Biden administration awards nearly $3 billion in grants to support major national initiatives. Yeah, great. Throw some more money around, why don't you, before you get out of office and screw things up even further. The Environmental Protection Agency, here it is again. This is another bureaucracy that's mired in red tape and has too much redundancies and too much authority, has announced the new round of funding for American ports. Are you sitting down for this one? To help in electrification and pollution reduction. The $3 billion Clean Ports Program. Remember, we just saw big union strikes about this, right? Will upgrade infrastructure at 55 port projects across 27 states. Once complete, this funding should reduce 3 million metric tons of carbon pollution. That's not what this is for. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey will receive $344.1 million towards electric cargo handling equipment, trucks, and charging ports. The Port of Detroit will deploy battery electric cargo handling equipment, solar arrays, and charging infrastructure with its $21.9 million grant, and on and on and on. So we just had a big strike. Okay. We just had a big strike with the ports, which is still up in the air because it's only temporary. So we're going to take $3 billion and donate it to port authorities to upgrade their infrastructure in a way that will allow them to get rid of more employees. Because if they're going to bring in electric equipment, they may as well bring in fully automated electric equipment, right? They already have robots that can do a lot of those jobs. And again, unlike most companies where they try to eliminate menial labor jobs, like with kiosks and things like that, or with automatic floor sweepers, in this industry, they start top down. So they're gonna replace loaders and unloaders and transport vehicles and things like that. The big jobs will go away first. Chris said she's rotten to the core, but good to the army. There you go. Nature Nerd says Stefan Molyneux made a podcast on the Roman Empire. The early Roman Empire only had a 0.1% or 0.01% tax rate. After you paid a minimum amount of taxes, you got to keep anything beyond that. Sven says, married to that dude will be waiting for the long game for a while. Rodney says the current administration is clearly trying to wreck as much as they can before they relinquish power. Exactly. I think that's because we've been seeing that. I mean, for giving the loan to the Ukraine and all this other money that they're throwing around, it's going to create more problems. He's going to burn Rome, is what he's going to do. He's going to burn Rome. He pardons a turkey while the world burns, basically. Puck says another $3 billion wasted, and Johnny has joined us. Glad you could make it today. Helter says Obama did the same thing and most of it ended up being pilfered. And Rodney says 3 billion to reduce 3 million tons of CO2. You could plant sufficient trees to soak up way more than that for much less. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, and Patriot's got to run. Well, glad you could pop in. This is probably, I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually part of some deal that the executive branch cooked up with the striking port authorities, with the unions, to give a temporary fix. Because remember, they might go back on strike in January, right? I think it's January or February. Somebody can tell me that in the comments. A temporary fix and cut this deal. But again, it puts the port authorities in a position to undermine those unions by replacing more of those jobs if this doesn't get shut down after Trump takes office. Flukeman says electric cars, again, didn't they learn anything when the electric buses and snowplows couldn't even switch on and had to go back to diesel-powered vehicles? Yeah, exactly. And on northeastern coastline, man, it is freezing out there in the winter. It is freezing out there in the winter, especially the closer you are to the water, the worse it gets. You know, when I worked at a refrigerated warehouse in the late 80s, and it was located in South Boston on the Red Line. I had to get up really early in the morning, catch the very first Green Line, B Line train on Commonwealth Avenue, all the way to Park Street Station and switch to the Red Line to get there. It took me like an hour to get to work in the morning. And then you'd have to walk because you pass the Amtrak railway stations and go under the bridge, and it's close to the water line. Man, in the winter, that air coming off the water, you just want to scream. It's awful. So I can't imagine electric vehicles working in that kind of environment. All People says, was it cold growing up in Massachusetts? Yeah, it gets really unbelievably cold out there. And like I said, the closer you are to the water, the worse it is. Puck says government shouldn't be taking sides in a free market economy. No, they should. Unions and government should not be collaborating. And Sven said union bosses on the take. Absolutely. Especially that guy, the guy from the Port Authority, is the worst. He is the worst. And one more here, and we'll move on. Nature Nerd says these substances on electric vehicles need to be removed. It doesn't work. Corruption is rampant. Or subsidies, I think. Yeah, subsidies. It doesn't work. Corruption is rampant. Taxes shouldn't be paying for it. Probably stifles progress. Sure it does. Because everybody takes a fat check and just pushes out technology that's not ready to be used. Solar and wind power and electric vehicles, they do not work as advertised. But they force that technology out. Again, if it worked as well as what we have, I really couldn't make much of an argument, but it does not. It does not. Cougar says, what do you think about the rumor of nuclear war before Christmas? I don't believe it. I don't believe that'll happen. And also keep in mind, there's a reason why the stockpiles are so huge. I know I get questions like that from time to time. Why does the United States and the Soviet Union have like 10,000 nuclear intercontinental missiles? Because the majority of them won't make it. They'd have to launch the entire arsenal for probably 15 or 20 missiles to make it. It doesn't. There's a lot of technology in place, weapons systems that will knock them down as they come in. And they're not going to detonate once they've been struck down. They'll land safely and you can just collect it up. You can collect up the remains. But it'd be a total waste. and you wouldn't get far. And then you've got a huge ground war. But yeah, the technology is there to prevent like 99% of the missiles getting through on either side. On either side. Puck says, if you're from Boston, where did you learn to speak English? Well, I'm not from Southie, and I'm not from Revere Beach. So, Revere Beach and Southie and a couple of other places, that's when you get that Boston accent. When people go around, they talk like this. They talk like Cliff Clavin. I park the car in Harvard Yard, that kind of thing. That's where you pick that up. I'm not from those areas. All people wants to know who's really getting the subsidy money. Yeah, all the wrong people. All the wrong people. Anyways, who has this article? This is a law and crime article, and it's an interesting topic of discussion. And it's something I've brought up before because I know someone that something like this happened to. I used to when I lived in Topeka, and SWAT raided, or KBI raided their house looking for someone who wasn't there and destroyed the place. And there's no repercussions for that. Jack says, what about those scramjet missiles that go to Mach 5 to Mach 10? Yeah, well, I very seriously doubt that all 8 or 10,000 of intercontinental missiles that Russia has, or China or whoever, are all converted to that system. There's probably barely a handful, and I would hazard to say that there's a system in place for that as well. That whatever we know about technology, militarily speaking, is probably decades ahead of anything that we could possibly dream up right now. So yeah, that's why people always bring that up. This isn't 1964, and if 100 missiles get launched, we wouldn't be able to touch one of them. Things have changed, really, even since the late 80s. I hazard to say we've had the capacity to knock almost all of them out of the sky, as did Russia at that time. And Jack says probably older 1970s Cold War era technology. Yeah, because can you imagine the expense of upgrading all those missiles? It's I dare say that we couldn't afford it. You'd be better off scrapping them all, and then the warheads wouldn't be compatible. You'd have to take them apart and reformat them. It's just not worth it. You build new ones and scrap the old ones slowly but surely, and then by the time you've replaced your arsenal, there's another defense network in place that will scrap that too. It's just not worth the trouble. It's all for saber rattling anyways, mostly. An actual nuclear situation, I don't see it happening. And like I said, if it did, the majority of them wouldn't make it. And keep in mind, primary targets are A, military installations, B, government storehouses, and that is political storehouses. So Washington, D.C., maybe New York City, anywhere where you can knock out the most possible leadership. So there we go. As we get into a law and crime article here, it says SCOTUS refuses to hear the case of a woman whose home was destroyed by a Texas SWAT team. And I think this is a very interesting story because, like I said, I knew someone that this happened to when I was living in Topeka. Because you may not be aware, if the police rampage through your house, they're not liable at all. So here we go. The Supreme Court justices have declined to weigh in on an Applegate court ruling that rejected damages for a woman whose home in a Dallas suburb was destroyed by a Texas SWAT team chasing a man that was holding a 15-year-old girl hostage. However, two justices who fall on opposite ends of the political spectrum, Sonia Sotomayor and Neil Gorsuch, disagree with the decision. Okay. But this is interesting. So on July 25th, 2020, a fugitive named Wesley Little kidnapped a 15-year-old girl. Little led police in a high-speed car chase and drove to the home of Vicky Baker while the girl was in Little's custody. Little had been familiar with the home because he had previously worked there as a handyman. Deanna Cook, Baker's adult daughter, answered the door. She, Little, and the girl with him from a posting about Little being on the run with a teenage girl earlier that day. Okay, Cook had been on the premises to help her mother ready the home for sale, and there was a for sale sign in the yard. Ultimately, Cook called her mother, who contacted the authorities. When the McKinney police arrived, officers set up a perimeter around the home. Little eventually released the girl, who reported to police that Little was armed and he was high on methamphetamine and hiding in the attic. All right. So police unsuccessfully tried several tactics to get Little out of the home. So he's in there by himself at this point. The girl's been released. And they launched dozens of tear gas grenades into the house. And eventually officers detonated explosives, which broke down the front and garage doors, and used a tank-like vehicle to bulldoze the home's backyard fence. And when police entered the house, they found Little had already erased himself, shall we say. So they did all that, and the guy was already demised. And it goes on to say, the tactics of police are not part of any dispute in the case. They've been deemed necessary to prevent harm to themselves and the public. What is at issue is whether Baker is entitled to compensation for the significant damages to her property resulting from this incident. The explosions left Baker's dog blind and deaf, and a remediation team was necessary to clean the toxic gas from the home. So they had to hire one of those specialized cleaning services to get the tear gas out of the house. Furthermore, ceiling fans, plumbing, floors, and bricks all had to be replaced. The damage was not covered by homeowners insurance due to the cause of the damage being deemed act of government, which insurance companies don't cover. Baker filed a claim for property damage with the city, and the city denied the claim. And she filed a federal lawsuit, and they threw it out, basically. So they made her they destroyed her house, caused, God knows, a couple of $100,000 worth of damage, and left her dog blind and deaf, but no liability because police. Because police. And Brian says, haven't seen one car chase with a suspect escaped. Well, you can't anymore. This isn't like Dukes of Hazzard here. It's not the 1970s where you can race around and get away from the cops. I mean, they can follow you everywhere now, especially with drones and helicopters. I mean, seriously, you can't get away. Nature Nerd says tariffs should have been implemented decades ago to protect American jobs. Trump's tariffs policy is long overdue. Reagan was the last president to use tariffs. And I keep going back to that. Reagan is the last president to really get anything accomplished before Trump. And Cougar made a donation to the channel. Thank you. He says, how's Dusty? Haven't seen her in a while. Dusty's okay. Dusty's going to get adopted because she's not doing well with the other animals. She needs to be in a singular environment, I think would be better for Dusty. JJ says, I find stories like this infuriating. Tuck says, cops down here raided Unit A in a duplex. The warrant was for Unit B, gassed a family with health issues, and proved impact Impact windows are very SWAT resistant. Interesting. Brian says, especially when they have helicopters and thermal vision. And imagine my surprise and phones. Yeah, they can follow your phone anywhere. They can follow your phone anywhere. Johnny says that's horrible. Private property damage and civil asset forfeiture are the biggest things private citizens are burdened and terrorized with, besides taxes, fees, and regulations. But this is terrible. This is terrible. I feel bad for the dog. That's driving me nuts. Can you imagine the trauma that poor animal has gone through now? Poor thing. But this is, yeah, stories like that, they're really hard to read. They're really hard to read, that government overreach and the total lack of responsibility from these people. Total lack of responsibility. That they're going to sit there and they're going to demolish your place and to be like, yeah, whatever. And it's like, I've told the story before in Topeka, someone that the police were looking for, and KBI gets a warrant and they raid the ex-girlfriend's house looking for this guy. And she's like, I don't know where the hell he is. I haven't seen him in like damn near a year. And of course, they don't believe her. So they search the house and then they start tearing the place apart because, and all people says, well, insurance cover it. No, insurance does not cover acts of government. There's an act of government clause in your insurance policy. So if any government agency rampages through your home, tough shit is how that works. But he had been injured somehow, this guy they were looking for. So they were expecting to find blood. So they removed her plumbing and they tore up floorboards in her kitchen and found nothing. And then they found the guy like, I don't know, a week later or something. And when he was interviewed, he was like, who, her? I haven't seen her in like a year. He was never there. And she didn't know where he was. But they destroyed her house and there's nothing that can be done because warrant. That's how it works. Nature Nerd says currently U.S. has a law where any exports under $800 are not tariffed, which China will take advantage of. Jack says some people want bigger government and control, a drop in the bucket for the feds, yet it could cost the person everything. Exactly. And they want bigger government. They want everything. They want everybody being micromanaged. They want to micromanage your entire life. They want to count the hairs on your head. Tuck says, if it were up to me, I'd make everything from everyone involved as compensation for the woman. Or take, including jobs and certifications. They literally get to keep the clothing they're wearing. And Imagine says, if police ask if they can search, never consent. No, you shouldn't. And it's not an issue of if you've got nothing to prove. And that's always the argument. Well, if you've got nothing to prove, it's like, it's not about having nothing to prove. It's about not wanting to get walked all over. That's what it is. But they'll use that as the excuse. Law enforcement always does that. Oh, well, he's guilty because he doesn't want no. Or they always use the term lawyered up. Oh, he decided to lawyer up, so I knew he was guilty. Up until you found the actual person you were looking for, and it turns out it wasn't him. I've heard way too many of those cases. Oh, they lawyered up. You should always get a lawyer. Never talk to authorities without representation. Never. Never. Rodney says, the more I hear this sort of thing, the more I want to become a hermit. Yeah, go straight up Grizzly Adams if you can. Johnny says, and it's government agencies that set up the law that protects themselves. I wish I could just make my own rules that favor me. Yeah, make myself a sovereign nation and put a little border around my property and declare myself my own government. I wish it was that simple. I wish it was that simple. Now here's a good one for you. Anyone from the UK today? I think Fluke Man's here, right? A BBC article. Coming to a neighborhood near you. Coming to a neighborhood near you. Knife bins to be rolled out across county. Knife bins. There you go. Knife drop bin. Ready to use now. This will solve everything. Knife drop bin. Does anybody use these? Additional knife bins are to be installed in more towns and cities across North Yorkshire starting in January. More than 1,600 bladed items were disposed of in a trial bin since it was installed in Harrogate in January of 23. Although knife crime is lower in York and North Yorkshire than across England, North Yorkshire Council said the success of the trial scheme had led other areas to request a similar bin. After securing £15,000 in funding from the York and North Yorkshire Office for Policing, Fire, Crime and Commissioning, part of the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority, 20 further bins will be installed in the new year. So you're going to tell me that 20 of these boxes costs £15,000? 20 orange boxes, £15,000. Oh, bullshit. Oh, God. Tuck says they're never answering the door for any government employee except the mailman. Yeah, you don't have to unless they have a warrant. B at 3% says you can never talk yourself out of jail, but you can talk yourself into jail. Exactly. Never voluntarily tell them anything. Never voluntarily tell them anything. Country says, my daughter's a police officer. I hope she never acts like that. Oh, I hope so too. Nature Nerd says, since Congress has legalized gambling and digital gambling, Americans have lost $254 billion. Yeah, I've been seeing those machines even going up in like supermarkets. It's crazy. Brian says officers are trained to trick people into confessing of guilt, even if they're not. Remember when they did that to my cousin Vinny? Yeah. Hey, I was trained. Remember when I worked for the Juvenile Justice Authority, and I even brought one of my certificates out and explained it for a course that I had to take at one of their correctional facilities to manipulate people. B at 3% says, sounds like an easy place for a criminal to get rid of the evidence. The UK is going backwards. And Fluke Man says it's a good idea. I think ghettos and gang areas in the US should install gun bins. There you go. You serious? If there were gun bins, man, somebody'd steal the bin. I don't know. I don't know if they're telling the truth about how many knives they collected. Although keep in mind that they said they got, what, 16? Was it 1,600? Yeah, 1,600 in 2 years, basically, because they installed it in January of 23. So in 2 years, the bin allegedly collected 1,600 or so knives, if they're telling the truth about that. What I have the issue with is, and again, yeah, you can dump evidence there. Maybe you got knives you just want to get rid of because they're dull or they suck. I'll just throw these old knives in the bin to get rid of them. Whatever. Who knows? But I just can't wrap my mind around spending £15,000 or about roughly almost $20,000 on 20 boxes, 20 metal boxes. Imagine my surprise. He said, keywords to police, no to every question, and I stand under no man and never volunteer any information. Did anybody ever see the show, Power Man? Is it Power? Because I know it's Power Man and Iron Fist, right? One of the what was it? One of the Netflix Marvel shows before Netflix went totally to shit. And they have the scene where the one guy is sitting in jail and all he would say is lawyer. And they'd ask him questions. They'd ask him his name and he'd go, lawyer. That's all he would say. Yeah, that's what you do. That's what you do if you're talking to police. Don't tell them a damn thing. Don't tell them anything. Johnny says you're not required by law to open your door or even talk to anyone through the door, and never step outside. If you do, you lose all your rights. If they ask you to step outside, decline. Say, no, I'm good right here. Rodney says the UK is screwed. The government has gone full 1984. Johnny says he watched these just step outside and talk to us videos all the time. Biggest mistake anyone can make. They want you to come out because they cannot come in. And then once you are outside, if your door is ajar, it's probable cause for entry. And Brian made a donation to the channel. Thank you very much, Brian. Much appreciated. He says, make a wish. I wish I could make a wish and it would work. And Luke Cage. The name of the show was Luke Cage. I keep thinking Power Man because that's what the name of the comic was, Power Man and Iron Fist. Tuck says, I went to a casino a couple of times. The only points of interest for me were the women and the pond full of fish, which predates the casino. Interesting. Nature Nerd says, knife vending machines. Puck says, in Britain, they've decided it's better to live on your knees than die on your feet. Exactly. But I can't imagine it's that expensive for this orange box with a padlock on it that anybody with a crowbar could open. Seriously. Somebody's cleaning up on these boxes. Quote, knife crime is a national problem, and amnesties like this help to get dangerous weapons off the streets without putting police officers in danger. The police officer, how's the police officer in danger if the knife is being surrendered? I mean, they're giving it away, right? I don't know. Knife crime is a national problem. You know why? Because where there's a will, there's a way. You took away most people. You took away a lot of gun rights and thought that was going to solve crime. Guess what? It doesn't work. Where there's a will, there's a way. And the official number for the knife collections in the last 2 years, here it is, 1,630 knives and bladed articles. What does bladed articles mean? What does that mean? What does bladed articles mean? Did somebody break a bottle and throw it in there and you've got 50 bladed articles? Did I miss something? Jack says, had a bad experience with cops. They can talk to me through my security camera. And Nature Nerd says Argentina apartments actually went down and became affordable, and they got rid of price controls. Yeah, Argentina. Is that so? And Tuck says their last interaction with a dispatcher sealed the deal for me to avoid law enforcement interaction if at all possible. And Imagine says butter knives. They're technically bladed, and if you know what you're doing, you can really hurt somebody with one. JJ says maybe things like razor blades for shaving. It could be. It could be. They could be shaving razors. They could be butter knives. It could be a fork. They could be sporks. Who remembers sporks? Who knows what a spork is? Do they still make those? Do they still make sporks? They could be sharpened sticks. Do you remember when you used to get a popsicle when you were a little kid, and you take the little wooden piece that was inside and you sharpen it on the sidewalk and make a little knife with it? Nature Nerd says Norks. No, SP, sporks. It's a spoon and a fork combination. They're 2 in 1. So it's like a spoon with little, with like 4 little tines on the end, so you could stab or scoop with it. Johnny said KFC started sporks. Yeah, Kentucky Fried Chicken back when it was still cool. And Jack says next they'll go after hammers because it could be a weapon. Everything could be a weapon. That's the problem. Everything could be a weapon. Anything. If you A, know what you're doing, or B, you're that determined. You're that determined. I'm that determined. I'm going to get you. And this pen is all I have. This pen is all I've got. I'll make it work. You're going to confiscate pens? Maybe I need to sign out for a pen. Maybe I put a pen. Every pen in the world's got to be on a chain so I can't take it anywhere. And then the chain's a weapon too. Anyways, with that, we are at the top of the hour. So I will go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com. Special thanks to Cougar and to Brian, who made donations to the channel today. Goes a long way towards helping us out. We really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone else who was able to join us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will